teleSUR English will continue broadcasting live the swearing ceremony and all the events of Honduras President-elect Xiomara Castro. As we see, all the invited people, also the guests for this swearing ceremony are gathering there in the National Stadium in Tegucigalpa, where this is the venue elected, the chosen venue for this inauguration ceremony for President-elect Xiomara Castro. Also, as we know, let's make some context, let's give you some details about this political landscape that she is going to receive and the country that she is going to inherit after Juan Orlando Hernandez. Xiomara Castro will be sworn in as the first female president of Honduras. Let's remember, this is the detail, this is a specific detail. This Thursday, January 26, marking the culmination of a remarkable rise to power that began just over 12 years ago when she led a massive protest movement in response to the ousting of her husband, former President Manuel Zelaya, in a military coup. Xiomara Castro won the polls with over 50% over Nasri Asfura of the National Party, who amassed 33.87% of the votes. According to Honduras National Electoral Council, the Liberty and Refundation Party, Libre, presidential candidate Xiomara Castro became the most voted person in Honduras' democratic elections history. Besides winning the election with the highest participation rate at 68% of the electoral roll, the president-elect will be the first woman to assume the Central American nation's presidency. The CNE informed that the Libre PN, the Liberal Party, and the Xavier Party of Honduras are the coalitions obtaining the most seats out of the 128 in parliament. Since the return to the constitutional order in 1980 in Honduras, no elected president reached 1.2 million votes.
Ya cuando se han detenido, que sí dice. Bien, vamos a continuar aquí en este sector para seguirles mostrando a ustedes lo que ocurre.
Now we have live images from Tegucigalpa, Honduras, as the presidential couple is just heading into the National Stadium in Tegucigalpa also, of course, to have this swearing ceremony, to also hold this ceremony. We know that there are top officials from several countries, and also we know there are presidents and vice presidents from several nations, former presidents also of the region that are attending this ceremony. This inauguration for Xiomara Castro de Zelaya, that she is accompanied by her family, the Honduran people, and also her husband, Manuel Zelaya, who was ousted in a coup d'etat 12 years ago, but is also one of the prominent political figures in this Central American nation. Let's review some of the main events of this morning because she attended a private mass before going to stadium. She attended a private mass at the Supaya Church nearby the National Stadium. The president was accompanied by her family and the closest aides. Let's remember, Honduras is a predominantly Catholic nation. The Basilica of Our Lady of Supaya, or Basilica of Our Patronus, the Virgins of Supaya, is a Catholic basilica of the Archdiocese of Tegucigalpa in Honduras. The Basilica of Supaya is the highest construction of the Catholic parish in the Republic of Honduras, whose invocation is to the Virgin of Supaya. In the 18th century was found the image of the Virgin of Supaya there by Alejandro Colindres. The image was first venerated in a hermitage built for the village of Supaya, erected in 1780, not far from San Miguel de Tegucigalpa. On September 9, 2015, Pope Francis instituted it as a minor basilica. The Virgin of Supaya is the patron saint of Honduras. So she going to have that private mass is like a sign of respect to Honduras culture, to Honduras people, but also to Honduras inherit and the patrimony, the cultural and intangible patrimony of Honduras, that people have this tradition. Also, the Virgin of Supaya is a symbol of this tradition, this connection with history, this connection with tradition, this connection with the most humble people in the nation. Also, let's remember, she invited several heads of state, and prominent female figures in the region. That's a paramount data, I beg your pardon also. That's a paramount thing because she is the first female president. She is the first woman president for Honduras. So she invited Cristina Fernandez de Kirchner, who was also one of the first female presidents in Argentina. Not the only one, but she was one of the first. Also, let's remember, she invited Kamala Harris, who is the vice president of the United States, and also has this prominence because she is the first female, black, and Asian vice president of the United States. It's many firsts for Honduras, it's many firsts for the region, but also, as we were saying in other times of this news brief, it's a full cycle moment for Honduras because, let's remember, her husband, Manuel Zelaya, he is a former president of Honduras, was the president of Honduras 12 years ago. In 2009, he was the victim of the coup d'etat, a military coup d'etat that ousted him from the top seat in the country. And she was the prominent figure, she was the protagonist of several demonstrations in favor of her husband. She also has been leading the political path of the left in Honduras for several years, not only as the leader, but also as a background figure that has been enhancing and bolstering the left in Honduras. Apart, besides, and despite the presence of the right in the head of the state, and also the presence of foreign interventions, the presence of corruption, the presence of many social discontent, she was there, supporting the left, supporting the Honduran people, and also supporting the possible bright future that maybe Honduras is going to have without corruption, without a bad administration, without a neglecting government in the top of the top official, the top post there in the Central American country. Also, let's remember, she invited several former presidents that have this left-guided career. We knew recently that she invited Luis Inácio Lula da Silva, who is a former leftist president of Brazil. She invited Dilma Rousseff, another former president of Brazil that also is part of the left in Latin America. But let's remember, she is inviting figures that apparently are contrasting because she invited Kamala Harris, who is the vice president of the United States, but at the same time, she is inviting Cuba representatives, Nicaraguan representatives, Venezuela officials. She is inviting also Bolivia's Evo Morales, who is a leftist, a radical leftist. So these contrasting guests, these contrasting figures, I think that is a message about how she is going to maybe conduct her foreign policy. She will be maybe a bridge between two opposites. She will be the conciliator between two big opposites, these big poles that are fighting for power in Latin America. And as we know, in times of COVID, in times of ecological crisis, in times of political crisis, in times of food insecurity, we need peace. We need we need to come together as a region. We need to enhance our unity and not our differences.
El Estadio Nacional, un hermoso mural. En la parte superior también podemos observar las banderas representativas de las naciones que hoy nos acompañan. Esos lienzos que observamos en la parte superior de la localidad Gradería Sol representan los 200 años de historia de Honduras, originalmente pintados en técnica de acrílico, en lienzos de 18 por 24 pulgadas, para luego transferir esas pinturas a 32 impresiones de lona vinil de 7.5 metros de largo cada una. Fueron elaboradas por el grupo de pintores Bicentenario, Un total de 22 renombrados artistas hondureños de diferentes rincones del país se dieron cita en Tegucigalpa desde hace varias semanas para hacer realidad esta majestuosa obra de arte para el deleite de nacionales y extranjeros. Los artistas donaron su trabajo a la Comisión de Traspaso y a las obras originales serán propiedad del Partido Libre. Serán propiedad.
We continue providing you details regarding this opening ceremony, this inauguration of Xiomara Castro de Zelaya. Let's remember she is the first female president in Honduras. She is also the wife, the spouse of Manuel Zelaya, who was a president in Honduras and also was ousted in 2009. These details seemingly are important, are paramount to understand the importance of this ceremony, the importance of this day, when a new legal term, when a new presidency, when a new government, a new administration is coming into power to Honduras. Honduras, that is a country battered by corruption, battered by ecological disasters, government neglecting, and also is one of the main emitters, to U.S. because of the immigration, because people is fleeing violence, is fleeing misery, poverty, and is misery also discrimination and exclusion. But this could be a new day. This could be a new 4 years term. This could be also a new political path for Honduras, because we are seeing a return to the will of the people. We are seeing a return to democracy, and also because Honduras is battered because of a previous administration that was corrupt, and now Castro de Zelaya is receiving this country to give it a new path, a new future, and a new possibility. Let's review, because Castro administration will face several social, economical, and political issues inherited from former President Juan Orlando Hernandez management. Among the priorities identified to guide the new government's work during its first 100 days in the fight against poverty, the need for economic reactivation and restructuring of the public debt. Tax collection will also be reviewed, the general budget will be aligned with national needs, and the fight against corruption will be intensified. According to data from the National Institute of Statistics, 74% of Honduran households live in poverty, 53.7% in extreme poverty. At the same time, the external debt, the private and public, exceeded $11 billion at the end of the first half of the year. Let's remember, Hondurans represent the largest nationality crossing the southern U.S. borders, asking for asylum also more than 200 families a day, according to the U.S. Customs and Border Protection. The Office of the UN High Commissioner for Refugees recently reported 247,000 internally displaced persons in Honduras, with up to 2.5 million people in need for emergency food assistance. Many are still expelled under the pandemic public health order. Also, the government of former Honduran President Juan Orlando Hernandez has been accused of theft of public funds. U.S. prosecutors have also implicated Hernandez as a co-conspirator in the crimes of his brother Tony, who was sentenced to life in prison for cocaine trafficking. The president denies any wrongdoing or that Honduras has descended into a narco state. One of the main goals of Castro's government is to provide well-being and self-reliance options for Hondurans.
En este sector ya están trasladando algunos reconocimientos que van a entregar al momento de que sea juramentada. Doña Xiomara, están ya trasladando algunos reconocimientos que van a entregar algunas delegaciones, algunos de países amigos que están acá en nuestro país. Y se sigue esperando la salida de doña Xiomara acá en este sector. Seguimos a la expectativa, como pueden ver ustedes, la inmensa seguridad que hay, ya todo estaba plenamente planificado cómo iba a ser este trámite acá. Siguen entrando otras misiones internacionales. Nos quedamos acá en la señal, Cristian, por favor, que están ingresando otras misiones internacionales. Como puede observar usted, ya abrieron el portón nuevamente, está ingresando otra misión de países amigos que han llegado desde el día de ayer, y hoy la llegada de la vicepresidenta de los Estados Unidos de Norteamérica. Han ingresado otras misiones que les están dando el seguimiento, les están ya dónde se tienen que estacionar, por dónde van a ingresar y dónde van a bajar el personal que viene en estos vehículos que son con tremenda seguridad.
The first aim of Castro's proposed plan is to repeal the most controversial laws imposed by what she refers to as the dictatorship. Some of the laws to be scrapped: the Ley del Consejo de Seguridad y Defensa, the Law of Security and Defense Council, La Ley de Secretos, State Secrets, the law, La Ley de Escuchas, Eavesdropping Law, and Ley de Zonas de Empleo y Desarrollo Económico, the Law of Employment and Economic Development Zones, among other national security laws aimed at consolidating the dictatorship. The second proposal, also hugely significant, may cause tensions among certain sectors of Honduran society, as well as in Washington, by calling for a popular referendum on the question of National Constituent Assembly. This was precisely one of the reasons used to justify the 2009 overthrow of Manuel Zelaya, Castro's husband. This proposal, however, will also be postponed until consensus can be reached between political authorities and civil society representatives according to the 30-point plan. The aspects of the plan directed at the party's grassroots base, along with other marginalized sectors of society, propose reducing the disproportionately high salaries of government officials, eliminating other excessive and superfluous government expenses, and selling off the presidential airplane and state-owned luxury vehicles. In addition, the proposal called for a reduction in the cost of fuel and for the reorganization of state-owned businesses. The plan also promised not to impose any new taxes on the Honduran people, on the country's productive and commercial sectors, and much less on the poor. It indicates, moreover, that the government will cancel taxes that affect end consumers and the competitive capacity of the business sector, but also stipulates that the state will impose contribution commitments on big finance capital, and that said contributions will go towards funding scholarships and employment for the country's youth. One of the proposals most anticipated by the future president's supporters is the decision to declare amnesty for all political prisoners and to grant a pardon to all those wrongly imprisoned for participating in protests in defense of human rights and the natural resources. Regarding the assassinations of environmental activist Berta Cáceres in 2016 and Margarita Murillo in 2014, the Castro government intends to continue pursuing charges in hopes of bringing the crime's intellectual authors to justice, and complicated undertaking given the power wielded by the alleged perpetrators. Along these same lines, the plan calls for protecting the natural environment and for the repeal of all mining, hydroelectric and logging permits approved under questionable circumstances by the outgoing government. The proposal also states that the new government is committed to working to provide preparations and reparations for violations against the victims of political violence, for those who were murdered during the 2017 electoral fraud, and for the victims of femicide. Within this part of the framework, and standing out as one of the plan's most significant proposals, is the call for the establishment of an international commission against corruption and impunity. The commission, the proposal states, shall be created by the government of Honduras, with support from the United Nations. Thus, Honduras seeks to resume the course abandoned by Guatemala by establishing an independent international body, whose purpose will be to support state institutions in the investigation of crimes of corruption, investigations of the sort that, in the case of Guatemala, resulted in the conviction and imprisonment of former President Otto Pérez Molina and the former Vice President Rosana Valderi. All other points of the plan focus on migrants and the reunification of migrant families, as well as the demands of educators and proposal to renegotiate the Statute of del Docente, a national law regulating the rights and regulations and the obligations of teachers. The plan also promises an increase in the national minimum wage, scholarships and grants for the poorest sectors of society, and the repeal of laws harmful to the interests of oppressed populations, such as the Ley Fundamental de Educación, the Fundamental Law of Education, La Ley de Empleo Temporal, Law of Temporary Employment, and La Ley Marco de Seguridad Social, the Law of the Social Security Framework, the laws regulating education, employment, and social security. The points underlined is the incoming administration proposal suggests that the new government will pursue its mandate with strength and determination. The Honduran people expect these policies to be fulfilled efficiently and effectively, and hope that the country will embark down a new path towards new horizons of progress and well-being.
va a esperar? ¿Va a esperar a la presidenta aquí en Salvador o se va de un solo para el estrado principal?
No, hay un protocolo que me van a informar en qué momento ingresa Xiomara, en qué momento ingreso yo, en qué momento los Doris Gutiérrez, Renato Florentino, los miembros del Congreso. Aquí estoy con mi esposa Irosca, venía con nosotros también de la ermita el presidente del Congreso, Luis Redondo. Hay un protocolo que vamos a, obviamente, respetar.
Bien, muchas gracias. Bueno, ya el ingeniero Luis Redondo ya ha ingresado al Estadio Nacional, ya ha ingresado el ingeniero Luis Redondo y también gran parte de los diputados que estuvieron esta sesión en el hemiciclo legislativo esta mañana. Gran parte de ya ha ingresado, otros que están ingresando en este momento. Un momento muy especial, estamos prácticamente a minutos, hay una aglomeración de personas tanto en la pista de tartán como en los alrededores del estadio. O sea, todo el personal que estaba previsto para ingresar creo que se sobrepasó la meta que tenían previsto por parte de la Comisión de Seguridad de Traspaso de Mando, porque vemos que prácticamente están sobre la valla del alambre ciclón, el cerco perimetral que divide las gradas y también el terreno de juego, el rectángulo de juego aquí en el Estadio Nacional. Y en el rectángulo no digamos, está completamente lleno. Ya todas las comisiones o las misiones internacionales y locales, invitados especiales, ya están en el Estadio Nacional, ya están dentro del Estadio Nacional, uno que otro que se ha quedado por diferentes circunstancias.
So as the presidential couple goes en route to the National Stadium in Tegucigalpa, the chosen venue to this inauguration ceremony, the presidential couple is going there. Let's remember Xiomara Castro de Zelaya, the elected president of Honduras, and also her husband, her spouse, for saying that, Manuel Zelaya, the former president of Honduras. Now let's take a moment to review and to see what is trending regarding this topic in Twitter, the social network that is going following minute by minute this inauguration. In the profile of the presidency of Honduras, there are several tweets, there are several publications regarding this moment, many of them just highlighting the joy, the rejoicing of the people there in the National Stadium, how several people are going there to attend to this inauguration, accompanied by their relatives. Whole families are going there, people from far-reach communities, but also many of them with handmade banners, with the symbols, the signals, the colors of the Libre Party, the party of Xiomara Castro. Also, they are wearing the colors, the red, the black, and the white, the three colors, the symbolic colors of her party. Many people there with their family, their relatives, also observing the COVID-19 restrictions, the COVID-19 precautions and protocols are in place, not only for the guests, the foreign guests, but also for the nationals, the people that is going there, the common people that is just rejoicing because of their new president. The presidential profile in Twitter, also aside of these tweets rejoicing and acknowledging the participation of the people, they are also celebrating the new cabinet chosen by Xiomara Castro that is going also to be sworn in today. In this profile, they are rejoicing and they are posting the pictures of several congresspersons that Xiomara Castro is swearing in today. That's the case of Marlon Ochoa as the Secretary of the Health. The Cabinet Secretary, Rodolfo Pastor de María Campos. Also, the Communications Secretary, Ibis Alvarado. The Secretary of Private Sectors, Héctor Manuel Zelaya. The Secretary of Natural Resources and Environment, Lucky Medina. And also the Secretary of Education and Social Inclusion is José Carlos Cardona. The Secretary of Defense is José Manuel Zelaya Rosales. The Secretary of Security, the General Ramón Savillón. The Secretary of Health, also, José Manuel Maceo. The Secretary of Economic Development is Pedro Barquero. and the president of the central bank is Rebecca Santos. As we can see, and as these publications are exposing, we can see this is a young predominant cabinet. There are several young figures that will accompany the government of Xiomara Castro de Celaya. This is a very positive sign because this means that experience and youth are going to be together working for Honduras. The new ideas, the fresh ideas, but also the traditions, also the experience, the wisdom are going to work together and are going to be joining this new administration that is coming to power today, January 26th of 2022.
De donde tienen un mejor ángulo de esta cobertura gigantesca. Bueno, ¿a qué horas entramos, Cecia?
A las 5 de la mañana.
5 de la mañana con 4
Y
minutos.
ahorita son las 11:22. Tenemos 6 horas con 22 minutos.
Sí, 6 horas.
Ya va a ser hora de la caminadita.
Ya va a
Sí,
ser hora de
Cecia,
la caminata.
vaya
Y la gente la
preparándose.
espera todos los días.
Sí, eso se volvió ya popular y lo vamos a transmitir en vivo porque nosotros estamos trabajando aquí. Pues la caminadita es obligatoria. No,
¿Se ha levantado usted hoy?
No,
no se ha levantado.
ni a lo otro.
Yo sí vengo de estar en acción.
Sí, pero no he ido ya me voy a mover
¿Una
para ir.
vez se ha levantado?
Sí, para ir a lo otro. También tenemos que movernos porque es necesario mover el cuerpo, pues. Es necesario mover el cuerpo. Pero aquí estamos. Este es nuestro trabajo. Este es nuestro trabajo. Fíjese que estábamos recordando que con Fernando, yo lo bañé a Fernando.
¿Se lo bañó?
Sí, yo lo bañé. O sea, es que se acostumbra cuando vos llegas a una institución, a una empresa.
Aclare bien.
Sí, por favor, ¿cómo así? ¿A qué edad?
Porque
No, además Fernando es más joven que yo, pues.
Por eso,
Entonces
por
yo
eso se aplicaría.
pude haberlo bañado.
Sí, se
Pero
aplica.
cuando uno va a un centro educativo donde yo estudié, por ejemplo, la normal de varones de Centroamérica,
ese es el bautizo,
el
no
bautizo.
es el baño. No es el baño.
Sí,
es el
pero allá
bautizo.
lo bañaban a uno. Lo metían a
¿Dónde, en
una.
Comayagua?
Sí, al río y lo metían y los que estaban en segundo año nos metían a los de primero. Y después nosotros, cuando llegaban los de primero, nos tocaba a nosotros. No, fuimos compañeros con.
¿Pero cómo lo bañó? ¿Cómo así?
No,
Todavía no ha contado.
tal vez me equivoqué en el concepto.
En el término.
Yo trabajaba en el Heraldo
Ajá.
cuando él llegó,
Ajá.
¿verdad?
Él llegó a ser el...
Sí, no,
¿Cómo llegó primero?
y llegó a ser jefe de redacción.
Jefe de redacción.
¿Cuántos años estuviste de jefe de redacción del Heraldo?
Por todo estuve casi...
Continuamos observando el ingreso al estrado de la delegación de la República de Costa Rica.
Rise to power.
En el estrado, la delegación de la República de Costa Rica.
¡Unidades!
Hace su ingreso la delegación del Reino de España, presidida por Su Majestad el Rey de España, Felipe VI. Honores de ordenanza.
¡Unidades!
Sí.
¡Presenten!
Xiomara Castro. Xiomara Castro will be sworn in as the first female president of Honduras on Thursday, marking the culmination of a remarkable rise to power that began just over 12 years ago when she led a massive protest movement in response to the ousting of her husband, former President Manuel Zelaya, in a military-backed coup. Castro's resounding victory in the 28 November election has generated hope for a new era for women in the country, with the highest rate of femicide in Latin America and some of the region's most draconian laws with regards to reproductive rights. Activists are optimistic that Castro, on the center-left Libre Party, will not only take actions that help improve the conditions for women in the immediate, but also accelerates broader changes in the country's culture. Among the first order of business, Castro is expected to undo a prohibition against emergency contraceptives enacted in the wake of a coup. Honduras is the only country in Latin America with absolute bans on both abortion and emergency contraceptives. As a result, women who have been raped have been forced to seek out emergency contraceptives on the black market. Since emergency contraceptives were outlawed by decree, Castro will be able to act unilaterally to undo the ban. When it comes to abortion, however, the situation is much more complex. In her plan for government, Castro included a proposal to legalize abortion in the case of rape, when the mother's life is at risk and when the fetus is not viable. But last year, conservative legislators approved a constitutional reform that raised the threshold needed to modify the country's total abortion ban to 75% of Congress. When a measure similar to Castro's proposal was placed before Congress in 2017, only 8 of the 128 legislators voted in favor. Although Castro's party has made gains in Congress since then, the legislature remains controlled by conservatives, including many from her own party. Women's rights groups have been working with members of Castro's transition team to draft violence against women law that will address deficiencies in the justice system that have led to disturbingly high levels of impunity. Castro has also proposed the establishment of shelters for women who are survivors of domestic violence, more inclusive economic development, and the implementation of an integral sexual education program in schools.
Una de las figuras de la televisión más icónica, el presentador.
We continue to see and to watch these live images from the National Stadium of Honduras in Tegucigalpa, the chosen venue for this inauguration ceremony of Xiomara Castro de Zelaya, the President-elect of Honduras, and also the future and the first female president of this Central American nation. Minutes earlier, we were watching the King of Spain, Philip VI, as he was attending this ceremony. He was arriving to this stadium, and now we see how people is receiving the guests, and also people is rejoicing in this ceremony, in this festivity for the national democracy of Honduras. People there is not only carrying the colors of the symbolic colors of Xiomara Castro's party, the National Free Party, but also we are watching them and we can hear them in the background shouting, "Sí se puede, sí se pudo, yes we can, yes we will, yes we can, yes we will." Because in this case it was the people who brought back the Castro-Zelaya pair, the Castro-Zelaya couple to the presidency. And also let's remember, this is the democratic will of Hondurans. This is the will of the people, the humble, the grassroots, the peasants, the indigenous people, the Afro-Honduran people, all the outcasts, all the minorities, all the displaced, the neglected people is there celebrating and rejoicing because they chose this president. They chose Castro de Zelaya. They chose a new path out of neoliberalism, out of capitalism, and out of corruption for Honduras. Also, and this is a good detail, this is, I think, this is a precious detail for the moment. Castro de Zelaya chose to display the biographies and the portraits of paramount and remarkable Honduran women outside the venue, outside the national stadium of Tegucigalpa. We can see this because in this moment we are watching live images from inside the stadium, but outside there are displayed several images of paramount women of Honduras. There is Berta Cáceres, the environmentalist leader. She was murdered. And there are also images of Clementina Suarez, Janet Gomez, and other historical figures, female historical figures that are now honored and with homage paid by this new president, the first female president of the country. This is a paramount detail because female figures are also forgotten and neglected by the Honduran history. As we know, patriarchy and several other ways of oppression against women and against the minorities have silenced their history and their achievements. But in this case, she chose to show them. She chose to put them forward. And she's choosing to put forward not only herself, but also all the outcast women, all the displaced women, and the displaced minorities in the country. She's going on with the policies of her husband, but also she's taking this presidency as her own. Okay, so yes, she's continuing the path of Manuel Zelaya, but she's also making this the Xiomara Castro presidency by going on with the women, going on with the indigenous, going on with the farmers, the grassroots workers, and also the humble people that chose her to be there at the top post, the top official, the prime seat in the country. They chose her and she's choosing them for her post. Now we continue with these live images. The guests are getting there, are arriving. As we can see, there is Felipe el Sexto, Philip VI, then the King of Spain going there. This is another gesture. This is another interesting gesture, inviting the monarch, inviting the King of Spain. As we know, there is maybe a colony-metropoly relationship there that we are reading in some sort of way. But as we know, there is also a path, a tradition that can't be forgotten. Maybe because she's inviting him there, she, the first female president, a leftist president. So this is not an act of submission. This is not an act of continuing and perpetuating colonialism in the country. This is an act of, yes, we were your colony. Yes, we were part of your kingdom once, but now we are free. And we invite you as an equal. We invite you as, yes, the metropolitan presence here, the metropolis presence here, but also you have to recognize the achievements of my country. You have to recognize the achievements of my government and the new path I'm going to draw for Honduran people, different from colonialism, different from neoliberalism, and different from submission, and also different from obedience. This is a new day for Honduran people, and it could be maybe a part of a new day for the region, for Latin America, maybe for Central America that is also battered because of corruption, because of several interventions, foreign interventions. But in this case, Castro is drawing in a new path. And she's saying that because of her guests, because of how she's chosen to present herself this day, and how she have chosen to present this venue. She invited the people in there. It's not like the people is far away from this inauguration, watching it from the distance. The people is there, the humble people is there, watching her, accompanied her, joining her in this celebration, alongside the top officials of many, many countries, the top officials of monarchy, the Spanish monarchy also, and the top officials even from countries that maybe they had a bad relationship under other governments. Let's remember that Venezuela, Cuba, Nicaragua had a bad relationship with Juan Orlando Hernandez's government, but she's inviting them again. She's inviting them, giving them a seat at her table, okay? She's giving the people a seat on her table because she's leading now. She's leading the country, she's leading the politics, she's leading not only for herself, but also for the people, she's leading for the women and the indigenous, accompanied by top officials, but only for the people.
Desde tiempos de la resistencia.
El movimiento social de espacios.
Nosotros observamos que desde las 3:30, 4 de la mañana, han estado ingresando y el clima pues ha ido cambiando, ya a esta hora ya le pasa factura el sol a los ciudadanos, el no tener acceso al agua, la deshidratación puede ocasionar este tipo de cosas, pero eso no es impedimento para poder seguir disfrutando y esperar del ansiado momento por los aquí presentes, y no solo por ellos, sino que por todas aquellas personas que siguen la transmisión de HCH Televisión Digital a través de nuestras redes sociales y nuestra página.
Son más de 40.000 personas, ya nos han confirmado, las que se encuentran en estos momentos acá donde estamos ubicados al interior del Estadio Nacional. Vemos allá a doña Piedad Córdoba, reconocida lideresa mundial, defensora de las causas y los derechos humanos. Piedad Córdoba, que también se encuentra acá presente. Observamos los movimientos que ya se están haciendo por parte de las autoridades del gobierno de la presidenta Xiomara Castro, porque ya en los próximos segundos, no sé si podemos alcanzar allá, Alan, porque ya están ingresando una mesa, que esa será la mesa y esa será la silla donde va a estar la vicepresidenta de los Estados Unidos, Kamala Harris. Y aquí es la pregunta que nos hacemos: ¿se va a seguir el protocolo que manda el gobierno de los Estados Unidos?
Xiomara Castro's administration would face several social, economical, and political issues inherited from former President Juan Orlando Hernandez. Among the priorities identified to guide the new government's work during its first 100 days is the fight against poverty, the need for economic reactivation, and restructuring of the public debt. Tax collection will also be reviewed, the general budget will be aligned with national needs, and the fight against corruption will be intensified. According to data from the National Institute of Statistics, 74% of Hondurans households live in poverty, 53.7% in extreme poverty. At the same time, the external debts, private and public, exceeded $11 billion at the end of the first half of the year. Let's remember, Hondurans represent the largest nationality crossing the southern U.S. border asking for asylum. More than 200 families a day, according to U.S. Customs and Border Protection. The Office of the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees recently reported 247,000 internally displaced persons in Honduras, with up to 2.5 million people in need of emergency food assistance. Many are still expelled under the pandemic public health order. Also, the government of former Honduran President Juan Orlando Hernandez has been accused of theft of public funds. U.S. federal prosecutors have also implicated Hernandez as a co-conspirator in the crimes of his brother, Tony, who was sentenced to life in prison for cocaine trafficking. The president denies any wrongdoing or that Honduras has descended into a narco state. One of the main goals of Castro's government is to provide well-being and self-reliance options for Hondurans.
Presidente José Manuel Zelaya Rosales, que daba a conocer que agarran un país, pero la meta es la transformación.
Pues nuestros televidentes también se preguntan qué ocurre después del ingreso de la presidenta al Estadio Nacional. Vamos a escuchar el presidente del Congreso Nacional que preside, Luis Redondo. Luego la presidenta tomará juramento. Sigue la imposición de la banda. Escuchamos las notas del himno nacional, la mención de honores de ordenanza, el saludo de los militares a la presidenta, las salvas de artillería, el sobrevuelo de aeronaves de la Fuerza Aérea Hondureña. Procede la izada del pabellón nacional. La presidenta, luego de ello, juramenta a los designados presidenciales, y de ahí lo que está esperando la ciudadanía también, el discurso a la nación. Luego de eso, la presidenta...
The president-elect of Honduras, Xiomara Castro de Zelaya, is arriving at the National Stadium of Tegucigalpa, the National Stadium of Honduras also, to attend and to hold this ceremony, this inauguration ceremony, as she is taking and assuming power, assuming the office of the top post of Honduras. In this case, she's surrounded by followers, surrounded by people that support her, her supporters, and also she is accompanied by her husband, Manuel Zelaya, a former president of Honduras that was ousted in 2009. 12 years ago, he was ousted by a coup d'etat by the military. Now we see her, the crowd is not stopping her, but maybe preventing her from going to the podium, as she is surrounded by them, and they all want to greet her, to say hi to her, and she's waving to the crowd. She's saying hi to the people that came to support her, but also the people that chose her, that voted for her, and to provide her with this top post. She's waving to the multitude, she's waving to the crowd, as she is trying to walk and to approach to the podium and to the main stage of this inauguration ceremony. As she's go there, let's review some details about this ceremony, this inauguration ceremony. We were observing several posts on Twitter, and it comes to attention not only that she chose to decorate the venue, to decorate the National Stadium with portraits of women and portraits of environmental leaders, but also with the disappeared and the victims, the images of the victims of other dictatorships and other moments of social unrest in the country. She shows this action to pay homage to them, to also to honor them, because those are the victims of the fight for justice, the fight for the left, the fight for a new future for Honduras, that they kept the fighting until a last day, a last breath, and she opted for honoring them, to give them memory, to give them voice, and also to be accompanied by them also during this important day, this inauguration. As we see those murals, the people that is portrayed in the background of the crowd, in the walls of this national stadium, those are the disappeared one, the victims of the dictatorships, the victims of other cruel governments, other neglecting governments, and the violence, the governmental violence. Other aspect in this inauguration is that all the venues going to the National Stadium, the boulevards, the avenues, the main roads are crowded, are full of people. But this time, as many users in the websites and in the networks are saying, this time they are not there to protest against the government. They are there to receive a new government, to rejoice for a new government, and also to support Castro de Zelaya as she is assuming the top post, the top office of Honduras. In this moment, she's going to the stage, she's going to the podium. We see people rejoicing, people is shouting her, people is greeting her, and also the people is there since early hours of the morning, as we have reports, since 4 in the morning. So there have been long hours of waiting for her, long hours under the sun. Also maybe complete whole families are there. People with their children, people with their elderly ones, but they are standing, they are just waiting for her. The stadium is packed, is full, is crowded, is in a multitude there. The stadium is roaring her name, they're waving to her, and she's waving back to them, because she is the president for the people, she is the president the people chose, and people is there just to say hi to their president, hi to their representative, the one that they chose and is going to work for them. She has promised to work for the countryside people, you know, the farmers, the peasants, the indigenous, the women, the displaced one, but also she has been saying that she's going also to work for the LGBTQI community, a community that has been displaced in Honduras, but also that has been marginalized from the political spectrum. Let's remember that during 2020, we had reports here in teleSUR English about trans people in Honduras facing hunger and facing unemployment and facing poverty during the first peaks of COVID-19, because they were neglected from help, and because the government of Juan Orlando Hernandez said that they were not men, they were not women, so they had no identity to receive food, to receive medicines, to receive help in the midst of the COVID-19 pandemic. So they were neglected. They had to find strategies of survival, but she said, Xiomara Castro de Zelaya said that she is going to work for them. we can see it's a sea of people. It's a marvelous sea of people just waving to her, just shouting slogans and shouting, "Sí se puede, sí se pudo, yes we can," because it's the will of the people that put her there, that brought her back. You know, Cristina Fernandez de Kirchner was saying yesterday when she arrived in Honduras, and she was repeating that today in the morning, she was saying, "El pueblo siempre regresa." People always return, always comes back. And that means the people always takes back what is theirs: democracy, power, power to the people, power to the humble ones. And this time Honduras returned, okay? Honduras people returned to power. They take back what is theirs through Xiomara Castro de Zelaya, through the Zelaya people, the Zelaya family, and also through her cabinet and the minister that she chose to lead the country, young ministers, as we were saying, and older ministers, maybe more wise, more experienced ministers, more mature in the politics. But the idea is, this is the country that is reborning. There are coming together the experience with the youth, the wisdom with the fresh ideas. They are coming together to a new Honduras. It's interesting, this new awakening maybe for the left in Latin America, because we had a electoral November full of elections, full of polls in Latin America. And we saw the winning of Gabriel Boric, who is maybe not a radical leftist, but is a moderate leftist. So he's an alternative government and an alternative official to other neoliberal policies in Chile. We saw also the permanence and the re-election of the Social Party in Venezuela as the main political force. We have seen in Nicaragua the re-election of the traditional, the government, the leftist government. In the case of the Latin American elections, we are watching this return to the left. Maybe we see the return of these forces that once gave progress and gave forwardness to Latin America. Now we see the presidential couple greeting and saying hi to the crowd, saluting the crowd and waving. We see Manuel Zelaya with his traditional big hat, this wide hat that he's always wearing as a symbol not only of Honduras, but also the Honduran poor people, the grassroots people, the ones who work in the coffee fields, in the banana fields, in the plantations. They are greeting each other, they are holding hands. This is a joint, this is a full circle moment, because, you know, this is the moment when, yes, this is a Zelaya impacted and, you know, government. This is a Zelaya continuity, but also this is a Xiomara Castro's government. This is a Xiomara Castro's presidency, because she is going to work with her ideas. She's going to work with her vision, with her ways to do things, because she is the new president, because this is a new government and this is a new political time. We are seeing also a return of female figures to the politics, and this gives a new perspective to politics in the region and in the world, because we have to say that women see the things through their eyes. Women see the other minorities, the other marginalized minorities. They see them, they work with them, they accompany them. And this is not a question about being feminist or being sex discriminative. It's not that. It's, you know, the nurture of the women is the vision, the joint vision of the women, and also is the different approach to government and to politics and to the top officials, the top work. Now the presidential couple is joining the guests, is waving the crowd. They are calling maybe some officials and some relatives to join them in this moment, to greet them. And the people is shouting, people is, as we see, rejoicing. As we know, because we knew, there were people with drums in the stadium, people playing their own music. And it was interesting because there were Afro-Honduran people, one community that many people doesn't know about, that there are there, but they had suffered kidnappings, they have suffered massacres. They have suffered cults because they are displaced inside Honduras. They have suffered the theft of their lands because Afro-Hondurans live in the coastline. And as we know, the coastline of Honduras and the part they share with Guatemala are contaminated because of industries, because of foreign factories there, and they have been displaced. But they came with their drums to Xiomara Castro's inauguration. They are putting their music in Xiomara Castro's swearing ceremony. So this says a lot about Xiomara Castro and how she's perceived by the people, how she's seen by the people. So we are waiting just seconds ahead of maybe the opening talks, the opening remarks by Xiomara Castro de Zelaya and maybe her attendees, her guests, and also because we are waiting the words by her and by her husband, Manuel Zelaya.
El civismo ante el desplazamiento de la bandera nacional de Honduras y su escolta a su sitial de honor. Honores de ordenanza.
Unidades, atención, presenten. Unidades, descansen. En posición. Descanso.
Invitamos en ese momento solemne a los invitados a tomar asiento porque vamos a dar inicio al momento más sublime de este día, 27 de enero del año 2022. A continuación, presentamos la participación.
A battalion of the National Armed Forces of Honduras was saluting the crowd, saluting the presidential couple, saluting the president-elect Xiomara Castro de Zelaya, and also they were indicating to guests to take a seat because the ceremony is about to start, as we were waiting also for the opening remarks from Xiomara Castro and also her guests that are participating and attending this swearing ceremony.
La sesión proceda con los actos de la ceremonia de este día.
Le pedimos en este momento a la concurrencia favor ponerse de pie.
Unidades, atención.
El presidente del Congreso Nacional, el ingeniero Luis Rolando Redondo Guifarro, se prepara en este momento para juramentar a la presidenta electa Iris Xiomara Castro Sarmiento. Le invitamos a que pase al frente. La señorita Irene Melara Zelaya, nieta de la señora presidenta, sostendrá la Constitución de la República. Se prepara el momento. Bien, debemos de entender el momento por el que pasa nuestro país. Un momento agradable, histórico y significativo. El momento del pueblo hondureño. Tenemos aquí con nosotros a la mujer que comandará los destinos de la nación.
Here with us a woman that is going to lead the path of the nation. And in a few minutes, she will be sworn in to the motherland. And we request, we request some 5 minutes because we need here the presence of Luis Redondo and also the judge, Carla Rivero, to swear in the first woman that will become the first president of Honduras, Xiomara Castro. So we have the judge here with us already. We're going to give a few seconds to agree to coordinate the procedure to follow on the part of the Judge of the Republic and together with the participation of the President of National Congress, Luis Rolando Redondo. We are waiting. This is a historical moment. It is a beautiful moment, and you must enjoy this moment because this is your moment. Luis Rolando Redondo Guifarro is accompanying Judge Carla Romero, and at the same time the former President José Manuel Zelaya Rosales.
Guardamos un momento para posteriormente dar la palabra tanto.
We are going to give the floor to the participants in a few seconds. So right now, it's right in this very minute, we invite the Honduran people to be part of this historical moment of the swearing in of the first woman that will be President of Honduras, Xiomara Castro.
Que no se escucha. Hola. Muy bien. Gracias. Ciudadana presidente electa.
Citizen President-elect of the Republic of Honduras, in compliance with Article 244 from the Constitution, I present to you this date in order to take your promise of a law sustaining the Constitution, which is held by your granddaughter, as a symbol that also youth has a commitment for the future generations with you. And likewise, the engineer Luis Redondo is with us. We're going to listen your promise of law rendered to my personality and to the entire people that are here. We would like to hear your promise of law in this very moment. I promise to be faithful to the Republic, to fulfill and to have the Constitution being fulfilled together with its laws. You are in a position of President of the Republic of Honduras. Thank you very much and congratulations. Our country is greeting the new president. It is Xiomara Castro Sarmientos. We now invite you to remain in your place, because next we will proceed to presenting the presidential banner to the constitutional president of the Republic of Honduras. It is Xiomara Castro Sarmientos, and we would like to give some space for historical photographs. This is a historical moment that the country is living. This is the moment of the people that has arrived, and we have a female president. This is the moment when Judge Carlos Romero, who is the judge of the Republic, has taken a promise, has taken the oath to the constitutional President of the Republic.
Nos preparamos para la imposición de la banda presidencial. La nueva mandataria saluda a su pueblo.
The new president is greeting the people in this very second. I, Salvador Alejandro Cesar, in my condition to first nominee, presidential nominee, in a public way, promise before the judge and the President of the Congress, Luis Redondo, to be faithful to the Republic, to fulfill and to have the Constitution fulfilled and the laws of Honduras.
Queda juramentado el ya designado presidencial de la República.
The presidential nominee of the Republic, Salvador Alejandro Cesar, is being greeted by the people.
El procedimiento de ley correspondiente.
The legal procedure corresponding, but the last word of what happens is to be owned by the Honduras people, that today is greeting its president. In the meantime, and while the procedure, the legal procedure is being conducted and legitimate procedure, the Honduras people, we can assert that, was the one that spoke on November the 28th. While this procedure happens, the Vice President of the United States is approaching the podium, Kamala Harris, and the people are greeting her.
Procedemos a la toma de protesta, a la juramentación de la designada presidencial Doris Alejandrina Gutiérrez.
Doris Alejandrina Gutiérrez is also being sworn in at this moment. Honduras people, myself, Doris Alejandrina Gutiérrez, in a public way and out loud, make this promise to you. I promise to be faithful to the Republic and to fulfill and to have the Constitution fulfilled and the laws.
Saluda al pueblo hondureño, la designada presidencial Doris
Alejandrina is also saluting the Honduras people. In this moment, the legal procedure is being conducted, which is granted by the law and which was granted also by the Honduras people to Zelaya. The Honduras people is expressing their love in this historical and moving moment for the nation. Next, we move on to the swearing in of the presidential nominee Renato Florentino Pineda. The judge of the Republic, again, Carla Romero, will take the promise of law accompanied by engineer Luis Rolando Redondo Guifarro. Myself, Renato Florentino Pineda, in my condition of third presidential nominee, and out loud, before the public, declare the following: I will be faithful to the Republic and fulfill and have the Constitution and laws fulfilled. Thank you very much.
Se realiza el procedimiento de ley. Firmas. Esperamos un momento en que estampan sus firmas.
In this moment, they are writing their signatures.
Las firmas que les acreditan
The signatures that accredit them as new presidential nominees that will accompany the first woman that becomes president in the history of this country, Xiomara Castro.
Le acompaña, ahí está, Renato Florentino Pineda. Saluda al pueblo.
Renato Florentino Pineda is greeting the people, and the people are greeting him back.
En estos momentos,
In this moment,
presenciamos
we
el
witness
acto solemne
the solemn act
de imposición
of
de la banda presidencial
presenting the
a la
presidential
presidenta constitucional
banner to the
de la
constitutional
República de
president of the Republic of Honduras. It is Xiomara Castro Sarmientos.
Observamos el histórico momento.
We observe this historical moment,
El expresidente de la República,
and the former president of the Republic, José Manuel Zelaya Rosales, is approaching. He, who was a constructor of victories, is showing the last presidential banner, democratic, that will be imposed to a president of Honduras, which means the return to democracy, which means the return of the law to Honduras. And he's now placing the original and the last presidential banner. Now the change, this means the change, it means democracy and hope.
Presidente Manuel Zelaya Rosales,
President Manuel Zelaya is accompanying engineer Luis Rolando Redondo Guifarro and Ms. Irene Melaya Zelaya, who is holding the Constitution, and they are presenting the presidential banner. And now we can hear the blank bullets that will be 7 and presented by the armed forces of Honduras.
Ahí está la presidenta constitucional de la República.
There we can see the constitutional president of the Republic, and in this moment, greeting her family, already accredited as the first woman president in the history of Honduras. And we invite the entire Honduras people with a patriotic love to greet and to sing next the sacred notes of national anthem that will be performed by the bands of the supreme powers.
Unidades. Unidades. Presenten.
La primera mujer presidenta en la historia de Honduras saluda a la patria y procede con el uso de la palabra para dirigir su primer mensaje a la nación.
Message to the nation. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Mi querido pueblo, señores,
Respected people,
diputadas y diputados,
members of Parliament of the National Congress,
señores designados y señora designada presidencial,
Mr. and Mrs. Presidential Nominee, magistrates of the Supreme Court of Justice,
mujeres
women
y hombres
and men
de Honduras,
of Honduras,
heroica
heroic resistance, national resistance,
militantes
militants,
y amigos,
and friends. Army 19.
señores jefe de Estado,
Heads of state,
presidentes,
presidents,
canciller de la República de México,
foreign ministers from Mexico, and international delegations and special guests.
Su Majestad
Your Majesty Philip IV, King of Spain, Kamala Harris, Vice President, representative of the people and governments of the United States of America. Cristina Fernández de Kirchner, Vice President of the Republic of Argentina. Institutions, international institutions, ambassadors, councils, and members of a diplomatic corps. Brothers and sisters of the nation, from the Honduras people. The presidency of the Republic has never been assumed by a woman in Honduras. We have had to see 200 years go by from the first moment in which our independence was proclaimed. We are breaking chains here, and we are breaking traditions here. These historical moments could only appear from the majorities, from the will of the majority of the population, and thank to the Honduras people this was possible. Thanks for this honor and trust. This historical date, I will inform the nation and also the international community on the real figures of what I am receiving. I will present data on the social tragedy and the economic tragedy that Honduras is facing. And I will be presenting my proposal of refoundation of the socialist and democratic state. The state of Honduras has been sunk in the last 12 years, and I received the state in bankruptcy. The country must know what they did with the money. And the country must know where that $20 million that they borrowed, the country must know where it is. My government will not continue with the sadness that has condemned the generations of young people to pay for the debt that they incurred to their backs. We must uproot the corruption of the previous 12 years of dictatorship. We have the right to refound ourselves over values, over sovereign values, and not over theft. The economic catastrophe that I inherit does not have comparison in the history of the country, and its impact in the life of people will be reflected by the increase of a 700% of the debt, of a 700%, meaning that the poverty increased to a 74%,
para convertirnos
to turn us
en el país más pobre
into
de América Latina.
the poorest country in Latin America. This figure
Por sí misma
in itself
explica la caravana
explains the caravan of thousands of people that from all ages are fleeing towards the north, towards Mexico and the United States, seeking a place and a way of surviving without caring for the risk that this implies for their lives. The state was built to ensure the inhabitants of the nation the enjoyment of justice, freedom, culture, and the well-being and the economic well-being. And as a result, we have the duty to restore the economic system over the basis of transparency, efficiency in production, and social justice in the distribution of wealth and national incomes. Despite the serious tax that we have been imposed and the increase in those taxes in the period of 2009 to 2022, the debt that we have received and the payment of interest has been so high that in this very moment, this debt is taking up 50% of incomes from the general budget of the Republic. After 12 years of dictatorship, the internal debt increased from 20,000 million to 179 million, meaning a 70%, 700%. And the external debt is from 37,000 million to 157,000 million. This means a 319% increase. And with these figures, it is evident that the state lacks the capacity to sustain the shameful debt that we are inheriting today. It is practically impossible to pay for this debt. The only way to do so is by means of a process of restructuring, by means of an agreement with private and public creditors. Talking about the budget, this is divided into 38,000 lines and comprises 393 objects of expense for 101 institutions. Most of the budget goes to payments and salaries. Salaries of 210,000 employees, public employees. 152,000 of them work in the areas of health, education, defense, and security. The legislative decree that the dictatorship published a budget for my administration violates the principle of no intervention in the coming government. This budget comprises only the amount and the legal availability to use, but did not give us the detail of objects of expense or any other guarantee of incomes to finance us. The question is, the question all of us ask ourselves is this budget, from this budget, how much of this gets to people? To the service of who is the budget? Who audits this budget and the execution of it? What do they do with budget corruption? Because to have economic resources for investing in people is one of my main missions in my mandate. This will be the main axis of the next budget that I will send to Congress. Will be very transparent and anti-corruption. I will now give some details about National Enterprise of Electricity. The destruction of ENE, it's a spot that the dictatorship gives us, and it's a fiscal gap of enormous dimensions in the short term. The problem goes well beyond energy. This is a social issue. This is an economic issue, and with a potential process that motivates migration. The options that have been presented to me by the financial institutions is to hire more debt, not to save energy enterprise, but to save the suppliers of ENE, to hire more debt for the payment of generators of energy. Without an emergency program for energy, without this, it means to become an accomplice of theft, legalized in harmful contracts to the national interest. They have passed laws to satisfy interests. They have organized a Secretariat of Energy and a Center of Dispatch, where representatives are nominated by the ones that sell energy. That means our judges are part and parcel in CRE and ODS. They have divided into three pieces the ENE, and they gave in administration to three trusteeships. They have granted a contract of measuring and reduction of losses that what it did was to increase these debts. They have granted dozens of contracts of generation of solar energy, thermal energy, and hydraulic energy to high prices and harmful for the national interest. Losses as a result of thefts in ENE reach over 38%. The impact in the cash flow is over 10,000 million a year. This is $450 million. Honduras goes beyond the average percentages of losses in the region. They turned the state in oppressor and violator to the human rights. With the Honduras open for business, they faked numbers and they have questioned the people's sovereignty. With the project of sales of areas to Sene, they have destroyed abruptly 4 of the 5 magistrates of the Constitutional Courtroom in order to achieve this purpose. They sell the land as any other merchandise. In this act, I give the National Congress the project of a decree that will eliminate the law of headquarters, elaborated by Deputy Member Maribel Espinosa. They have modeled the entire legislation to their own interests without any concern for the brutal damage over the population, and this population have been reduced to misery. This was not the lost decade like in the 80s, but this was the corrupt decade in the history of Honduras. It is impossible to find any similar moment in our history, any moment so filled with sabotage against our country. But I did not come here today to create a story full of complaints or to reduce historical accounts from the past. Justice will take care of that. When we created the Party of Resistance and we created political alliances, we did so with a deep awareness of ethics in order to refound a nation with a mission of a full nation, a mission that will not only demand answers for those that have been responsible for the image of our country, and it will ask questions to those that have placed the image of our country over the floors, but we are committed with our proposal of democratic socialism to set the foundations that will fight corruption so that these matters that have brought us shame will never return and will never happen. The refoundation of Honduras starts by the re-establishment of respect, life as the most important value, and the safety of citizens, men and women. No more death squads. No more silence before the murders of women. No more gangs, no more drug trafficking and organized crime. We want people from Honduras to feel the presence of a state that guarantees their rights,
donde se pueda
where
vivir en paz.
you could live in peace.
Nuestra policía
Our police
será una policía preventiva,
will be a preventive police, community police,
disciplinada y
disciplined and friendly police.
una policía
Our police will be a police
que debe de cultivar
that should grow
el sentimiento
the
de
feeling
servicio.
of service.
Iremos transformando paulatinamente
We will change
las
little by little
organizaciones de los
organizations
cuerpos de
of
seguridad
the security corps
para que se conviertan
so that they
en
become
colaboradores de
collaborators
la ciudadanía.
of the citizenship.
Vamos a concentrar los mayores
We
esfuerzos
will focus our best
en
efforts
4
in
sectores
4 main areas
permanentemente reclamados
that
por
have
los ciudadanos y
been
ciudadanas:
claimed by citizens of Honduras,
educación,
and they are education,
salud,
health,
seguridad
safety,
y empleo.
and employment.
Ellos serán las anclas reales
They will be
al
the
progreso
cornerstones
y al
to the
desarrollo.
progress and development.
Educación
Education
como objetivos
as-
de suprema prioridad.
as an objective of high
Desde
priority.
mañana
From tomorrow on,
iniciamos
we will
el
initiate the dialogue with teachers
para el retorno de nuestros niños
to return, to have our children return to class in a presential way.
Tenemos que redefinir el sector de salud.
We have to redefine the area of health in every possible infrastructure and national network, with the preeminence over the public sector that should devote its time to prevention and strengthening of primary care,
con énfasis
with emphasis
en niños,
in children,
niñas, mujeres
boys,
y
girls,
adultos
women,
mayores.
and senior population.
Seguridad no solo jurídica,
Safety not only in the areas
sino
of
seguridad
law,
ciudadana también.
security, but also security,
Seguridad social.
citizens security, social security,
Seguridad de que se puede hablar con libertad.
security in the sense that we can talk freely and without
Seguridad
repercussions,
de que el
security in the
disenso
sense
es
that
admitido.
discontent, rational discontent, is admitted.
Compatriotas,
Fellow citizens,
en el marco de este
in the framework of
bicentenario,
this 200-year celebration,
refundar
refound is more than a verb.
es una misión
It is-
imprescindible
It is a paramount
e
mission,
irrenunciable con la que
and we must adhere
debemos estar comprometidos
to it, and we must be committed to it
a causa del mandato directo del pueblo
as part of the direct
manifestado
mandate of the people manifested
amorosamente en las urnas.
manifested in the last elections.
El gobierno no va a estar solo,
The government will not be alone.
sino que
The
acompañado
government will be
de la
accompanied
voz y la opinión
by the
del
voice and
pueblo
opinion of the people
a través de las consultas
through
populares.
popular consultations.
Es por ello
For this reason,
que convoco
I call
desde ahora
from
al pueblo
now on
hondureño
to the Honduras
y
people,
solicito al
and
Congreso Nacional
I request to the National
que
Congress
apruebe la ley para la
to approve the law
participación
for
ciudadana
citizenship
para las
participation
consultas.
for consultations.
No podemos estar atados
We cannot be
a que tengamos
tied.
que obtener 86 votos que sustituyen la voz del pueblo.
We cannot be tied to the fact that we need to have 86 votes, and because of that, we cannot make consultations.
No, gracias.
Thank you.
En el marco
In the
de los
framework
respetos a los derechos humanos
of respect to human
que
rights
ha movido a la resistencia
that
con
has
sus
moved
mártires
resistance with
en
its
estos 12
martyrs
años de lucha,
in these 12 years of struggle,
desde esta presentación
from
de
this
mi promesa
presentation
de
of my
ley,
promise of law,
bajo mi atribución
under my constitutional right of directing the policy of state and represent people with a firm commitment to ensure all Honduras people to enjoy justice, freedom, culture, economic well-being, and social well-being. I demand, first, that more than 1 million families living in poverty and consume less than 150 kilowatts per month from this moment on, they will not pay the bills of consumption of energy. Electricity will be free in their homes. This decision implies an extra cost for the national enterprise of electricity. The high consumers of electricity will have to assume a price in their invoice to subsidize energy that we will give for free to the poor people in Honduras. I will submit a project of law to the National Congress to create subsidies for fuel and to be able to reach a reduction of current prices. Third, I order the National Bank and the Finance Secretariat to create legal mechanisms for the reduction of banking interest for production. Fourth, to the Ministry of Education this ministry will receive budgets to return students to classes, especially for our girls, young girls and boys, young people, and guaranteeing free registration, free snacks, vaccines, and masks. Fifth, my entire government must concentrate on the agricultural development and the food sovereignty. We are going to renegotiate the clauses of CACAP. With the armed forces, we will work hand in hand in the protection of the environment. Seven, no more permits of open mines or exploitation of our minerals. No more granting in the exploitation of our rivers. Our rivers or national parks and rainforests. 8. I will place special attention to the agro-forestry development, industrial development, the promotion of tourism, and a strict fiscal and monetary policy. 10. In the next 100 days, we will take urgent measures that I promised during my campaign for the refoundation of Honduras. 11. freedom for political prisoners in Guatinol. 12. Justice for Berta Cáceres. 13. Senior population. People living with special challenges, childhood and youth. Aboriginal population and native population and LGBT communities. All of you will have a place and precise care within my government. 14. In this first month of legislature, we must dismantle the evil constitutional reform with contracts of executive powers validated illegally by the National Congress that violate popular sovereignty. 15. It is a commitment taken by the Alliance to issue the law of condemnation to the coup, to the military coup that destroyed the constitutional path. The law of condemnation to the sentence of re-election, illegal election, which in itself is a crime of treason to the nation. The law of amnesty for political prisoners, prisoners of consciousness, and people of Honduras that are in exile for their return. I order to give back the nationality that was stolen in the coup d'etat to Father Andrés Tamayo. 16. To abrogate the laws that were passed in less than 60 days, especially those meant for ransacking public funds to sustain the political apparatus. 17. The laws that were meant for the destruction of social protection and to criminalize protests. The laws that promote corruption and the ransacking of public wealth. Contracts and concessions that damage the economy. It is ourselves who have to guarantee that the dark times of legislative dictatorship do not return ever, because Congress will become democratic. 18. This year, 2022, we must guarantee the first historical and transparent popular consultation over constitutional reforms. 19. The immediate reform to the budget of the Republic that goes beyond constitutional laws on the economic ruling and financial ruling and public hacienda. 20. The installation of National and International Commission for the frontal fight against corruption and impunity in Honduras, with the support of the Organization of the United Nations, these are immediate tasks of execution. I have ordered the Minister of Foreign Affairs to send a communication to the United Nations requesting their support and assistance against corruption. 21. An open state and digital republic are our proposals to promote the development of our country and, furthermore, to foster our capacity to self-manage in a more efficient way our needs in all possible areas. 22. A foreign policy that becomes Central American and Latin American, sovereign and friendly. We support multilateralism and complementarity. Honduras people, this is a moment that will remain in our history as the moment of a generation that decided to be free, and that will bequeath the coming generations the possibility of growing, believing that a better world is possible. Our vision of the world places the human being in the front and above the market. We have the best disposition and spirit of dialogue. No more violence against women. I move forward with all my strength to close the gap and generate the conditions so that our girls can develop to the full and live in the country free and without violence. To the Honduras women, I am not going to fail to you. I am going to defend your rights. I'm going to defend all of your rights, and you may be sure of that. Until victory forever. Now I invite the Secretaries of State and officials from the government to stand up and to raise their right hand to present your promise of law and to repeat, I promise to be loyal to the Republic and to fulfill and to have the Constitution fulfilled and the laws. This is what the nation expects. Thank you very much.
This is the greeting from the people to the new President Xiomara Castro. In this moment, the president elected by the Constitution, Xiomara Castro, salutes the people of Honduras and she walks through the public. The people greet her. Xiomara, she is walking among the people, the president of Honduras, always close to the people, together to the people, to her people, that people that had suffered a lot, that today they see a new future with Xiomara in power. She said, I will give all the power to the people during her discourse. I will give all the power to the sovereign people of Honduras. She keeps walking among the people, accompanied by the lady, her granddaughter, and also accompanied by members of the security body. The new president salutes the people, to the Honduran people. The army salutes their new president, the commander-in-chief of the army from Honduras. Present arms. The elected president of the Republic of Honduras salutes to all these who have been waiting all this year to this moment, those who walked through the hard path till today to the victory of the Honduran people. Now we do have a president. The elected president of the Republic of Honduras salutes her people. The homeland salutes the new president. This is your day, people. This is our day. The day that we dream of. This day have arrived finally. So we have new hopes. Democracy is here. The Constitution is here. The Constitution is back to the homeland, hand by the people, led by the president. This is a very important moment. This is a party of the people. This is now or never. That's her phrase. Now or never. This is the moment for the country to advance with the support, with the solidarity and the acknowledgement of the international community, represented here by many people. She salutes all the people who are here from the international community that are visiting today and that are with us here today. The army greeted their commander-in-chief, the president. She continues her work. It is Xiomara Castro, the new president of Honduras, who today is accompanied by her family, the former president
And we were watching live the swearing ceremony of Honduras President Xiomara Castro. Prior to her arrival to the National Stadium in Tegucigalpa, Xiomara Castro and her family attended a private mass at the Suyapa Basilica, the main Catholic church of Honduras. She was sworn in by Justice Carla Lisette Romero and accompanied by her granddaughter in a symbolic act that represented her commitment with the younger generations. She received the presidential banner from the hands of her husband, former President Manuel Zelaya, and under the cheers and shoutings of a roaring multitude that attended the event. The National Armed Forces saluted her and acknowledged her as top commander, a gesture of loyalty amidst a troubled political landscape. Addressing the nation as president, Xiomara Castro promised to tackle corruption, organized crime and violence, poverty and other social burdens her office inherits from their prior administration. She also referred to environmental justice, the protection of natural resources, and claimed justice for late environmentalist activist Berta Cáceres. She called for legality, respect of the institutions, and the enforcement of people's will. She also pointed to the need of better funding policies in order to ensure resources are handed to the ones who actually need them, to close the gap between the rich and the poor. teleSUR English will provide you with more details in upcoming news briefs. Stay with us.